good morning. Welcome to our special panel during Circular Week 2020. We have today a group of special guests from 6 countries. 2 are online and 4 are with us in the studio. But of course, all of us are online, so it is kind of a new atmosphere for conferences which are only online. But I think that the subject is quite important, and there are a lot of discussions now going on in the world everywhere that how to build back better our economy, and a lot of people are saying that circular economy can be a kind of a, at least one of the solution, because COVID-19 has revealed our current economic system's vulnerability to different risks. And I'm afraid that pandemic risk is just the first of the series of different risks for our economies and for society, and challenges us to rethink and redesign for resilience. And then, of course, making circular economy more relevant. And so my question is, how important is the transformation towards a circular economy from your perspective? So, for example, Finland is very active in promotion of circular economy. Why it is so important for you?
Well, thank you for the question, and also good morning from my part. And well, the question is very relevant also from the point of view of mitigating climate change. And the Finnish government adopted 1 year ago a policy that we aim to be a carbon neutral economy by 2035. And to reach that, it is important that we move from linear economy to circular economy, because and so circular economy has substantial economic and also environmental implications. So we see it as a kind of win-win situation that at the same time moving towards circular economy provides substantial business opportunities, but at the same time also the benefit is that we can mitigate climate change, for instance. And well, Finland is an Arctic country, so we see the effects of climate change more in the Arctic. Also, we are a Baltic country, and Baltic Sea is the most polluted sea in the world. So for that reason also it's important that we take steps towards a circular economy. Not only, but it's really a big part of this.
And in your perception, what is the link between circularity and adaptation or mitigation of climate change?
Well, because the certain industrial processes, when we use raw materials, it's also having an environmental effect or effect on the climate. So if we actually in the globe, we are consuming more raw materials than actually we could afford. So in that sense, when we actually kind of recycle and reuse, we try to stop producing this waste. Of course, it has a really strong environmental impact in the future. And also you mentioned also this the COVID situation. We very much in Europe talk about the strategic autonomy. So I think that from the security point of view also in the future, it's important that we become less dependent on raw materials imported, so that we actually use the raw materials again. What do we have? And the residues and the side streams. So we see it really like a win-win situation.
Okay, thank you. So we are moving from the north to the center of Europe, in fact. So what you can say, why is in your country, I think that it's a part of your tradition probably to take care of resources. So why do you think that circular economy is important for you, and what are you doing to promote this among businesses and individual customers? Because as we heard, we have to change our consumer habits as well.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for the question. Indeed, Switzerland is very much oriented towards circular economy and mostly sustainability, because you've been talking about challenges And I think you're totally right. COVID is a challenge. COVID is probably the challenge of the next 2 years. But sustainability, passing a sound environment to our children and grandchildren, that's the challenge of our generation. So we cannot deny that we have created this problem in the past decades. And if we want to hand over the world in a responsible way, we have to do it now. And therefore, Switzerland very strongly supports the climate goals, the Paris goals, together with Poland. I want to congratulate Poland for its efforts in COP, the Agenda 2030. And when it comes to Switzerland, indeed, thank you for the compliment. We have good records. We have good records because our country is very densely populated, I believe, and therefore that has created early a tradition of taking care of nature. But even if you can swim in the Swiss rivers and we don't really have what we call an air problem, there's no reason to be proud for the Swiss because we are a very wealthy economy, and what we don't produce in our country, we import it. We have a very good recycling degree, but at the same time we have a very high consumption degree, and therefore we still create a lot of urban waste. We do have a very good carbon record, but we import lots of carbonized goods. And that then has to be taken into account as well. So,
but do you think that it's possible, to convince, your citizens to consume less, or is it the only solution for circular economy and for survival in a way, on our planet to consume less?
Consume better. I think the first rule is that you have to make visible on the product how much damage, carbon, energy, and so on it complains. And there I think we're on a good way in Europe. Then secondly, I think you have to create incentives by giving tax rebates for people that well insulate their buildings. We use lots of living space in Switzerland, but we get good tax rebates when we do change to eco-friendly heating or good insulation of the building. And then also some penalties. And some penalties are being considered by the Swiss Parliament currently. This is a big discussion in Switzerland, that, for example, you have to pay an extra when you fly, so that you make an equal trade-off between rail and flying. So that might be entering into the Swiss law very soon.
Yeah, so it's a kind of a carbon tax, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah, in every countries in Europe, we are now discussing this, and at the level of European Commission as well. So it's really challenging. Yeah, so we are moving to Norway, and so what do you think about the necessity of this transformation and how to support businesses? Do you think that business is already prepared? Are they expecting some, financial incentives from the public administration, or are you supporting businesses to move this transition, or just you think that it's just so obvious for business, it's about cost cutting for them, and it's just to being competitive on the market?
Firstly, I think that there are really two perspectives at this, at least, and first is the kind of the moral or survival perspective, and the inextricable link between the way we use and waste materials and climate change, and about 50% of all greenhouse gas emissions and 90% of the biodiversity loss is actually related to extraction and processing of resources. So this is not very sustainable, and we need to address it if there shall be an earth for our kids to inherit, really. The other perspective is, of course, the opportunity perspective, that if we make this transition, there will be opportunities, there will be green growth, new jobs, and competitiveness being created.
Yeah.
So what we need to do, obviously, is to embrace the change and make the best of it. And for that, well, we need a very comprehensive approach, which I think is eloquently communicated in also the circular economy action plan of the European Commission.
Yeah.
That we need a comprehensive approach, work across businesses, sectors, cities, region, governments, and not least nations. This is a cooperation exercise that we need to implement.
And what do you think about fossil fuels? So do you think there is possible, to get rid of fossil fuels, for countries, I mean extraction and the whole industry around that? Do you think that in Norway it's still possible, to stop using this?
Absolutely. I think that we may not be able in the world to get rid of all fossil fuel because there will still be some products that will need fossil fuels as a raw material. But Norway is working hard to implement systems, carbon pricing and so on, so that we can phase out the use of fossil fuels as soon as possible. And we need to do that because the climate is changing rapidly.
Yeah, and do you have such an ambitious goals, carbon neutrality towards 2035, like in Finland?
Absolutely, we have many goals. We do, first and foremost, very relevant these days with the European Council going. We are fully supporting the increase of the reduction, emission reduction target for 2030 to 55%.
Okay.
That's the first target. Then we fully support also net zero target for 2050.
Okay.
So
inspiring, and I think it will be also an inspiration for the Polish government. I hope so. So what about Austria? So it's also, how important is this transformation to circular economy, and what public administration can do to support this, or to incentivize, or to convince business, consumers, and especially a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises? Do you think that this transition is possible in a short term, or it will take hundreds of years to be fully circular?
No, first of all, thanks for the invitation, and thanks maybe also of composing such a round of eminent colleagues and experts on the very topics you are raising. Experts, why? Not because we are experts indeed, but because we are representing countries that may have a certain particular role in this change. So it's definitely not hundreds of years. It should not maybe be even dozens of years, but of course economic change doesn't happen from today to tomorrow. Nevertheless, we have been witnessing this spring an economic impact of something which we did not expect, which seems to be far stronger and of course far more negative than a planned change, as we want to see it with getting into renewables, or the strengthening renewables, strengthening circular economy and so on. As very concrete. So we have, of course, also subscribed to not only to the Paris goal, but to far more ambitious national programs inter alia. And this is maybe again an advantage of a country like Switzerland or Austria. You have mountains, you have water. So we would like to have 100% of electricity generation by exclusively renewables by 2030.
Okay.
Currently we are around 67, 68, 60. Maybe with this year's lower consumption, we might be on 70, 71. So this is still a mile to go, a couple of miles to go.
It's really great, it's so ambitious goal. I didn't hear even about
we
that.
We would be trying to block the installation of new oil heatings in individual households as of, I think, next year, if I remember correctly. So maybe there is now also a bit of a discretion for a couple of months or something like that. But let's say, why not take also such opportunity? And this is not only dependent on virus and so on and new investments, but this was a governmental plan for a couple of years. And then since last year, we have a green participation in the current government, which of course has been presumably strengthening such policies. And of course, this then goes from things that you can easily do at home, and where probably we have been behaving differently than our parents, and where our own kids are behaving differently than we do, from management of resources, from, I don't know, for example, food waste would have been something which you wouldn't even consider maybe a couple of years ago in Europe. Reduction of things like plastics and all the pollution of the seas. I don't know, this higher recycling rates. Interestingly enough, and it was also to my surprise, in this very wonderful circular week, there was a prominent representative of a prominent building company, happens to be an Austrian one, very prominent also in the Polish market, and the gentleman, let's say, introduced figures that might really be surprising. 50% of the Earth's raw materials are used for construction. 40% of primary energy is used in buildings. 35% of greenhouse gases are created in the construction sector, and some 30% of all waste is created in the construction sector. So definitely these companies know that this is a cost factor. So this is not only for the very beneficial goals of us having a different pollution and so on, but this, of course, at the end, it's also shown in the wallet and in your finances. So this is a win-win situation, hopefully for everyone. And it's not in the centuries, but it's in the decades at max.
Yes. So it's of course it's important, to have education, especially managerial education, on a high level, because I think that a lot of managers are not quite convinced, that it's really cost reduction. They are just still thinking in terms, okay, we are not rich yet, enough. Like in Poland, I can hear from a lot of managers, no, circular economy is not for us. It's maybe, for the richest countries like Switzerland, but it's not for Poland, because we have to fight for survival on the market. And I'm still talking about how to create competitive advantage in a new market. And we need a lot of examples to be inspired. So I think that it will be a good possibility to cooperate. Just to providing best practices from companies. From Switzerland, from Norway, from Austria, and just to have this kind of exchange on an educational level.
But still, I would be surprised if you have a 2-digit contribution to your balance sheet, that there is no economic chance to look at it, irrespective of the place where you're working.
Yes. Okay, so we are moving now to our online guests. So maybe first to the Netherlands. So it's and especially looking at the Dutch experience, I think that we can be more concrete, maybe, and just could you pick one success factor and one challenge in advancing circular economy in your country?
Yes, good morning to all of you. But before I'm going to talk a bit about success and challenges, let me first thank you, the woman behind all this, Agnieszka Snik, and her team, of course, because we do understand that organizing such a circular week with so many events in times of Corona is really quite a challenge. You're doing well, and I already hear that many people are really enjoying all the sessions. So thank you very much to Agnieszka Snik. Back to a success in the Netherlands. What we see is that we are becoming increasingly more successful in strengthening what we call extended producer responsibility, EPR. What does it mean? It means that a producer is not only responsible for the product the moment it's ready, the moment it's finished. No, the producer is responsible for the product, let's say, from the cradle to the grave. So from the very moment he or she starts producing till the end, the product is gone, the product is old, the product is no longer functioning. So this means that in extended producer responsibility, he or she is also responsible for the waste management. So for collecting the waste, sorting, recycling, incinerating, landfilling, etc. So this is something new, and we see that we are becoming more and more successful in this. Well, how do we do this? We do this by encouraging to look at the entire value chain. not only to their suppliers, but also what comes in, let's say, the afterlife of the project. What helps in this case is, of course, making is subsidies, is taxation, but of course it's also developing new technologies. Let me give you some concrete examples, because that's what you were asking for. Unilever, for instance, guarantees a demand through its packaging companies of recycled PET plastics. So these companies know that there is a steady demand for recycled PET plastics. Coca-Cola has invested in cooperation with a Dutch company called Morsinkhoff Recycle to achieve 100% recycled PET in the small PET bottles. This is made possible by cooperation in the network of the Plastic Pact and, of course, the deposit system that we have in the Netherlands. You also see all kinds of new technologies coming up in recycling. For instance, Unica, which is a pioneering Dutch startup in chemical recycling, also there recycling is possible. Or a Dutch startup called Human Corp, which is breaking ground in the market of sorting and recycle. It is now already possible for them to process contaminated plastic waste into 99.8, so almost 100% pure plastics, which can then enter the market as raw material. So we see that slowly, because one of your questions was, how fast is this all going? Well, we do see new technologies, we do see innovation, and we do see that things are progressing and moving forward. Of course, we all like to see that it's going much faster, but in that sense, we are really quite optimistic. Challenges there are, of course, as well. And one challenge is actually related to the current corona crisis. People are ordering more and more products online. E-commerce is flourishing, but as a result, so are the waste flows. And I think it was the Swiss ambassador who referred to the fact that here in Europe, many of us, we contribute to more waste and more products that have to be recycled or otherwise have to be thrown away. So what happens when people order their products online? You know, for instance, you are going to order shoes, but you're not quite sure about the size, so you order 2 or 3 pairs. You only need 1 pair. So what you do is you send the other 2 pairs back, which then means that the product, in principle, is it's not able to sell it one more time. There is a lot of paper, plastics, etc. Involved. So now we are trying to introduce, there is a discussion in the Netherlands to introduce some sort of a deposit system, or at least have people pay for the fact that they are sending the products back. Because now it's relatively easy. If you don't like it, you send it back, and at no extra cost. And by doing that, you add to the waste, but you also add to CO2 emissions. A very concrete example of this is a Dutch firm that is also present here in the Circular Economy Week. It's called MUD Jeans, M-U-D Jeans. And I think they will also make a presentation today. Yeah. In order to produce 1 pair of jeans, you need 7,000 liters of water and a lot of chemicals. I must admit, when I was reading this, I felt a bit ashamed of wearing a pair of jeans. But this company, MUD Jeans, they have introduced a lease system for jeans. So by the time you no longer want to wear your jeans, or they are torn or whatever, you can send it back, and the company will ensure a full reuse of jeans and its materials. So a lease system for jeans. I think it's quite a good example.
Yeah, but just I have, if it is possible,
at the moment is, of course, that recycled raw materials are more expensive than, let's call it, virgin raw materials. To be concrete again, Van Werven, it's a Dutch company also present here this week, is a producer of recycled plastics. They face the same challenge. So we are thinking in the Netherlands about taxation, more subsidies, or a mandatory share of recycled. And of course, again, innovation might help as well. So there are challenges, yes. But there are also some good examples that we can all benefit from.
Okay, thank you. And we can now move to Sweden. And just with the same question here, could you pick some success factors or challenges in fostering or supporting circular economy in your country?
Well, thank you very much, and let me also start by thanking the organizers of this event. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations to Agnieszka and her team for organizing this week, also during the very difficult conditions under which we live. Successes and challenges. I think one area where we have been fairly successful in Sweden, just like in other countries, of course, is in terms of waste management and sorting waste. I think we Swedes are pretty used by now of how to sort waste, that we need to sort it, that it will be used properly. Now, less than 10% of household waste in Sweden goes to landfill. The rest is used one way or the other, either being recycled or used for heating in the municipal heating companies. That can, of course, be done even more efficiently. And I think the key why it has been fairly successful so far is that we have, as citizens, been convinced that it actually makes sense to sort it. It has a point to it. It's not like we just put certain things in certain bags and then it all goes to landfill anyway. We know that it's being used properly. And I think that's also the key when it comes to the challenge of the circular economy as a whole, that obviously it needs to be a comprehensive approach. We need all of us to buy into this concept, and for that we need to know that it works, and we also need to know that it will lead to a better society without necessarily us having to pay a price of living at a lower standard. And I think there is there's not necessarily any choice here between living at a high level of standard of living or lower level, because we can do both. And the key, I believe, and we talked about this last year, I remember, the key here is the fact that consumers will demand products which meet certain standards. I think there is no dispute in society about the impact of climate change, the fact that it's driven by the way we have lived our lives for a long time, and that we need to change the way we live our lives. So consumers will demand goods and services which meet the requirements set by these conditions, and the producers will respond. And they are responding. And I think business is actually driving the transition to a circular economy. I don't think business is a problem, at least not in Sweden. Business is driving this transition because they know that if they do not adapt, they will not stay competitive. This will be the demand on the global market and certainly on the European market. And if you as a company can't adapt to the requirements of the circular economy, you will go bust. It's as simple as that. So you need to adapt. And the key factor for businesses to be able to adapt is the progress in terms of technological development. Science, obviously, on the basis, but based on science, the technological progress and the technological solutions which will be available. which will allow us to, for example, replace rare metals, which are now extracted in a few places in the world, sometimes under appalling conditions, with other materials. The way we can store energy, the way we can make sure that energy is transmitted in an efficient way, new energy sources and better use of existing energy sources and so on. All of that is going to be available thanks to technological progress, which in turn will be driven by the demand of consumers and the need for producers to respond to that demand. And the challenge, I think, is for us to make this work comprehensively. So we need close cooperation between business, government, academia, other actors. We need it nationally, we need it internationally, certainly in the European Union. And I think also there we have a good basis in the European Green Deal and all the discussions and decisions which are now underway at the European level, which will create the framework within which we can do this job in the member states.
Okay, thank you. So we can move now to the second round, and I think the last one, in fact, so a little bit shorter even than the first one. But I think what we heard from Ambassador of Sweden, and I think that it's true that business is not a problem for circular economy. Business is a solution. And I think that this kind of thesis is quite obvious from your perspectives, but it's not so obvious in Poland. And I think that of course we have a lot of international companies operating. Companies from all of your countries are here, and they are doing really a great job, to educate and to cooperate with others. And these international corporations, and especially at the business level, is so important. But what do you think about how we can improve this cooperation? What we can do more, to cooperate better on a level of economy, but also, business education, or maybe, politicians, decision makers, different NGOs, how to improve this? Because in fact, we are one Europe and we have to find common solutions. It's, there are no borders for all this, pollution and all climate catastrophes. So what is your recipe, for cooperation and for improvements, between Finland and Poland?
Well, I would say that actually taking part in this Mazovia Circular Week is one way,
yes,
actually.
Thank you to all of you.
And I would like to join my colleagues thanking Innovo for this and giving the possibility to take part in this. So, it is important that our experts meet experts from other countries. We have contacts with the administration, not only at the government level, but also at the local level. We know that we all have twin cities that they meet regularly, so I think we can, in a way, lead by example. And
I think that this cooperation at the city level it's really important here, not only on a governmental level, but twin cities. It's really circular economy is developing on a city level. Yeah.
And then like one example is also the World Circular Economy Forum, what Finland hosted last year, and also online this year, and next year Canada is going to be the host. So I think we also need collaboration at the international level. I think circular economy should be also included in the future in international agreements. Also a reference was made to the European Union, so I think that the European Union's circular economy action plan is a good example. We now are talking about the multi-annual financial framework and also the recovery plans, and there's a substantial amount of money coming from the European Union sources, like 750 billion euros just from the Recovery and Resilience Fund, and that is very clearly also connected to the green transition. So the European Commission is expecting also countries to enhance their actions towards the green transition. Then from the Finnish point of view also, we have, for instance, the Finnish Technical Research Center, which was actually one of the speakers on Wednesday. It's a government-owned research center, so they are seeking for collaboration with both private and public sector actors using the Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe funding. So I think really the European Union is providing a very good framework also to enhance the collaboration. But also you mentioned companies. We, like you rightly said, that we have many companies in the market. So for instance, the state-owned energy company Fortum and Metsä Group, which is a forestry company, they have established a 50 million euro ecosystem to produce from straw and also pulp new materials, and that ecosystem is open for other companies also, including Polish, and also partially they are planning to use also EU funding. So I think there are ample opportunities, but you rightly said also that when we talk about education, I think we should also talk about primary education, not only educating consumers but also children. I think that it starts from there, like my Austrian colleague was referring to food waste or recycling, and it's important that also the schools take this and the parents take this because we know that the children are actually better in recycling than sometimes the parents, but you have to teach this. So it's actually important to take this into consideration at all levels of our lives.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And what about Swiss? I know that, in Switzerland there are a lot of headquarters of big multinationals which are operating here. So we have this kind of cooperation on economic level. But how does it, how to accelerate, to improve this cooperation? I know that it's not possible to learn from others without making mistakes, but it's still, we need more cooperation in these new ideas. How to do that?
Well, good cooperation is always bottom up and top down, and that then gives the solid cooperation. And in my previous intervention, I talked about cooperation between Switzerland and Poland when it comes to reaching the Sustainable Development Goals or the Paris Climate Deal. And this Circular Economy Week is a very nice example how we stimulate the bottom-up cooperation, and I want to give you 3 examples. One example is yesterday we had a zero waste breakfast at the Swiss residence, where a Polish cook who is actually going around and collecting food and fruits, bread that can no longer go into sale, and he prepared a very tasty breakfast with that for the people there. And one of the people there was a Swiss expert who has developed an app with which restaurants and stores can better plan the consumption that they will have by taking into account the weather forecast, by taking into account all kinds of factors that may influence consumption. So that's a very concrete example. Or then you talked about bigger companies. Switzerland is very big in the construction supply industry, and today we will have an exchange between the Future Cities Lab of Zurich University and the Singapore branch of the Future Cities Lab with Polish experts. So I think that is a very nice example. We have construction supply companies here in Poland, Swiss construction supply companies, elevators, all kinds of materials. Or a third might be what we feature on our Swiss-Polish Innovation Day on the 3rd of November, when we bring into touch Swiss transportation planners we have a very dense transportation network with Polish transportation planners. And so transportation on trains, on public transportation in general, will be the topic there. So you see, bringing experts together, bringing interested people together, make the whole thing fun. Information exchange has to be fun, otherwise it will not ignite.
Yeah.
That is, for me, as a representative of Switzerland here in Poland, really what I'm trying to achieve.
Okay. Thank you. So what about Norway? So we have to be as short as possible.
I'll be short.
Yeah.
First, I'll just confirm as my Swedish colleague that the change is very much business driven in Norway also. It's actually the business who's pushing the government for stricter rules because they know that will create competitiveness, really. On cooperation, I'm very glad that we have the EA Norway grants here in Poland, that it's a very powerful tool to foster bilateral relations between Poland and Norway, and very much also directed towards underpinning the whole green transition. That's a very powerful tool. I can't enter into it now very much, but please take contact with the embassy and we'll explain more. Then on the situation in Norway, I would also like to emphasize that we are an advanced country. Already 98% of the electricity production in Norway is renewable. We have the highest penetration of electric vehicles and so forth. We even have some very good examples in circularity with a return and deposit scheme for bottles and cans, introduced actually in 1902, and now more than 1 billion cans and bottles are recirculated every year. So it's a great example. That's almost 90% of the consumption. However, a couple of weeks ago we had this published circularity gap report in Norway, and it shows that we are actually behind the global reference. At the global reference we only recirculate about 9% of the raw materials, and we are behind that. So I think this is not necessarily a one-way approach. The key is, again, it's cooperation, exchange of ideas and experience between countries. We have to learn from each other. So again, for me also, thank you for organizing this week. It's exactly what we need.
Thank you. So what about Austria?
Again, it's education, it's regulation, it's incentives, it's subsidies. Definitely there is a bit of research and development. So, and there is EU money, and there is, thanks God, also money from countries who are not members of the European Union. You just mentioned the Norwegian experiences in analyzing the quality of your own circularity, so to say, on the waste management. We are a little bit above, surprisingly enough, so we are around 10, and this is, I think, 10% above the global level, which is too little. On the residential waste, however, it's already 58%. And let's say many of us had been, let's say, trying to look into their rooms and into their households during spring this year, and in many a place, and also in smaller places, smaller villages, you can then go to some centers that would be exactly set up by companies who are specialized in recycling. And I don't know, from the electronic waste to the old furniture, to your old cloth, to your old shoes, down to glass or whatever, you can already yourself contribute in of course recycling, but of course in the selection and sorting the waste before recycling. And this is, I think, the thing making difference. Of course, it's an enormous challenge for the public administration, and particularly maybe maybe it's good for big capitals, and maybe they have also the symbolic values and so on. But definitely there is a challenge, and we try to work with the organization of mayors in Austria and here to foster such better approaches on how you can really deal it with such challenges on the ground.
In fact, we have to change everything, all our habits. So thank you, and we are moving to the Netherlands. So how are you going to convince, Polish companies and governments to advance and to cooperate more? What do you think about this cooperation?
Well, I think what is very important is that companies change their perspective. Not just look at it as, another problem, another challenge we have to face, but look at it as an opportunity. And then I think that given the huge potential that is present in Poland, the very high entrepreneurial spirit that is present in this country, the creativity and the professionalism that it is around, I don't think that it will be that much of a challenge, but it will be really easy for many businesses to see it as an opportunity. And just let me give you one economic argument. If in Poland the use of materials and energy would be heightened by 1% in all sectors, Poland could generate a total added value of 20 billion Polish zlotys. That, I think, is a very simple economic argument, and I'm talking only about improvement of 1%. Also, we have a Dutch initiative that is active here in Poland. It's called Circle, and this is actively supporting Polish small and medium enterprises by presenting circular business models to them, putting them into practice, practicing it in workshops. So I do think that there is really enough potential, and also we see that things are happening. So I'm an optimist about that.
Thank you. So me too, in this sense that I'm also optimistic. So what about Sweden? We have the last voice here. What we can do more in this cooperation? We know that already we are cooperating, but we have to speed it up. Yeah, we have to make it better. So what are your tips, for having a better cooperation?
Well, I think I'll make 2 points. One, a general point with regard to our cooperation in the European Union. I think what we need to do in the EU is to work together to set clear rules and standards so that there are clear rules of the market. Companies and consumers will then know what to expect and what to adapt to. Product information was mentioned. I think that's one important factor, so that we also have a level playing field when it comes to competition. It should not be competitive to waste resources, certainly not in the European Union. And here we need the cooperation between member states, and I think we are well underway of getting results, but more can be done, and more should be done. It's also about the competitiveness of the European Union on the global market. We need to make sure that the EU stays competitive. Otherwise, we will not have the resources with which to invest in our work in member states when it comes to the circular economy. The second point concerns Poland and your question as to what we can do to convince Polish companies to think in these terms. I think they will realize, as I mentioned in my previous intervention, they will realize that in order for them to stay competitive, they need to adapt. How we can do that? Well, I think from our perspective, probably the most efficient tool is our own companies, our Swedish companies present on the Polish market, because they work, most of them, on the international market. And they have adapted, and they are continuing to adapt. They are working with Polish companies in various partnerships, either as buyers and sellers, or together to produce new solutions. And they, I think, are much better adapted to work together with Polish business to support Polish business in becoming more competitive. And I think there is no contradiction here. We have an interest in Poland and the Polish economy being and staying competitive and becoming more competitive, because it's an important market for our companies and also a very important part of the global value chain in this case, Swedish companies. They invest here in innovation, in development of products and solutions, and for them to be competitive, Poland needs to be competitive, and the Polish part of the value chains need to be competitive. So I think that's a very important part of the cooperation.
Yes.
In addition to that, we of course, like others, are doing various projects bilateral with Poland. We have a very good cooperation when it comes to urban transportation systems, how to structure them in a sustainable way. We are working closely there, of course, with various Swedish companies in the transportation sector, which I think are well known. And also when it comes to energy, IKEA, as you know, they are selling solar panels.
We
also
know all of
have
that.
their own wind power plants to produce energy for them, for the company itself. So they actually produce as much or even more energy than they consume in Poland. That I think can be a good example of Polish companies as well.
Yeah.
They can invest in their own energy production to make sure that they are actually contributing to renewable energy in Poland and not only consuming it. So as you understand, I'm generally optimistic. I think that this is going to be done much quicker than we can expect, thanks to the realization that we need to do it, the demand from the public, and the technological progress that is being driven by this demand.
Okay, thank you. So it's I think that we can be optimists, and because of this cooperation going on. So we have to finish this panel. So it was a great honor and privilege, and also a pleasure to have all of you here. So in the name of Innovo, I'd like to thank you for all what you are doing and your countries. And I think that's really what we need. It's more cooperation and more events like this Circular Week 2020. So thank you once more, and we would like now you to invite to listen to Freek van Eyck from Holland Circular Hotspots. Thank you once more.